Dun, 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 dun. What's up, sons? It's Blind Run with Son of a Tech once again, and today I'm going to go over my entire setup for creating content, playing video games, and of course, browsing crypto Twitter and talking junk on there. But before we get into it, here's a word from our sponsor. Today's sponsor is myself. To support the channel, click the join button below the video and you will get access to our privately hosted Rocket Chat. Selecting the $1.99 option will get you access, and after that you need to head over to the membership tab, scroll down, and expand out your membership perks. Find the section for connecting on social media, and in that section there will be a secret registration URL to join Rocket Chat, where you can sign up to enjoy talking with other cryptocurrency enthusiasts and miners without spammers, scammers, or bots. Yes, I've done all the math and we are at about $10,000 for this setup, and that is primarily based on, of course, retail costs of the equipment included. That being said, I do have some upticks on it for the GPU, for example, just because that is the way it's going to go. I'll give you guys the prices I paid on it at least, because that's what I can find, and just give you guys some ideas on what I need to do, obviously, to finish a whole office setup here. But let's just get the main desk out of the way. We are rocking the Uplift 80-inch desk, and it just has the thin top. I highly recommend not getting that because it has begun to bow, and I will probably need to replace the top at some point. Definitely not happy with that. The motors are fantastic. The frame is good. I just am disappointed with the top, especially for the price, which it came in at $700 how I ordered it and configured it. It has basically two little holes in there to add your cable management, some cable management on the back, and that sort of thing. Let's talk about the PC build, because we did mount the PC to the desk itself, basically using a drill to drill and tap into the frame, and then mounting a TV stand mount on there, and then mounting, of course, the Thermaltake Core P1 to it. That Core P1 will run you about $130 on Amazon right now. And then the goodies inside, we have the ASRock B550 Tai Chi motherboard, which we have a review on the channel for. That's running for around $280 right now. I didn't pay that. I paid less and got it from a buddy. That being said, that's what you would pay for it. The Ryzen CPU that's in it is going to be the exciting 5950X, which I got lucky and was able to obtain from Micro Center during my trip to pick up the RX 6700 XT for testing on the channel. That's going to run you $800 at retail, upwards of $1,000 in the secondhand market, basically because of all the prices skyrocketing. So there's where you would be at. The GPU is the RTX 3090 from EVGA, specifically the For the Win 3 edition Ultra. Now on my particular card, we did replace the original cooler with their AIO kit, which is a 240 millimeter radiator that basically slaps on to it. We have a guide on the channel for that, and that's the GPU we're running in this particular setup. With all of that included, right, like we're talking about the cooler and all, we're looking around $2,000 just for the GPU setup right now, and it's insane. It's definitely not worth it. If you have a 3080, you should be perfectly fine. The reason we have the 3090, like you guys know, we test hash rates, we mine on these cards. That's how we get our ROI. So it has ROI because we got it right on launch. So I'm pretty happy with that. The Elgato 4K 60 Plus is an add-in card. These are two PCIe cards. And I do need to upgrade to the second revision for the HDR pass-through and a little bit better bandwidth. And that's why we haven't really moved to 4K yet. But it does work really well with 240 hertz monitors at 1080p. And so if that's something you're looking at, which I like to game at high refresh rates, so being able to have that pass through, or if you want to add G-Sync, there is a setup where you can basically clone the monitors over. But having that refresh rate at 1080p through a capture card is super awesome. And I think the highest selling point for that particular item, and that will run around $400. And you will need a beefy machine because it doesn't have the encoder on it itself. So you will have to be encoding with, of course, the CPU or the GPU, depending on your configuration. Now, we do secondarily have in there an Elgato HD60 Pro. This is what we plug in the web camera through if we're streaming, and is super awesome. It's old. It keeps working. I've had it for years and years, probably 5 or 6 years at this point. I bought it when it launched, and it's been a great capture card. You can pick them up for $170 now. If you're looking at streaming consoles, even new consoles, I mean, of course, with the new ones, you might want to go with the 4K, but it was primarily used initially for me to stream Xbox and, of course, PlayStation 4. Actually, I think all the way back to PlayStation 3. I'd have to go look, but we definitely have been using it for a long time, and for the price, it gets the job done if you're looking at creating content. Now, for the memory, we have Crucial Ballistics 266 megahertz, 64 gigabytes of it. Now, Crucial sent this to me years ago, and they don't necessarily make this kit anymore, and it was for Threadripper, but it's in the 5950X, and of course, it has the, the 4 slots filled up, and you should get something a little bit faster. My go-to now is the G.Skill Trident Z Neo. It's on the test bench back here, actually, and that just works in almost every system. The 3200 or 3600 megahertz kits are amazing. They're my go-to. It's just what we have in here is that kit because memory is expensive. 64 gigs of it can run you upwards of $700 right now. And, I'm not going to go buy new memory if I have some sitting around. And it is a little slower, so the gaming performance with the Ryzen isn't as good, but that has been alleviated a lot with the latest generation of Ryzen. And this is pretty compatible. It does work in this particular system and clocked right over to the XMP profiles. So I'm pretty happy with it, or DOCP if we're talking about, of course, AMD. Next, the drives in the system. We have a Sabrent Rocket 1 terabyte drive, and that is the NVMe 4.0, of course, PCIe 4.0, and that's running around $160 right now if you want to go pick it up. And then we have a cache drive that's actually just over SATA. It's 256 gigabytes from Inland, and it's going to run you about $40. What I have this in there for in particular, and I think I want to upgrade it possibly to PCI Express 4.0, but right now all it is a cache drive for Adobe Premiere. And so a lot of the times what you want to have in Adobe is like a 3-drive setup where you have your source files, you have a cache files on another drive, and then you have your output drive to another. Our output drive right now is actually going to be both on the NVMe 4.0. So we have our source files and output to it. And then for games, we have a detached kind of case that we put a SSD in, a 2 terabyte SanDisk, and so I can just move my Steam games from system to system. I don't do that as much anymore as I did when we were going to a lot of events. However, it's still nice to have in case I want to go play a game on my test bench or play it on my main rig or whatever it may be. And those will run you about $200, and like I said, it's 2 terabytes. Powering it all is the EVGA 850 watt G2. What I have linked down in the description, by the way, links for all this in the description, is the G3 version, which is going to be around the same price, $160. Of course, the G3 is just a new revision, a little bit better, some new features, blah, blah, blah. This G2 I've had for a long time, so it just keeps rocking. Let's get into the fun part, the peripherals. Starting things out, you guys probably noticed the monitor. This is new. We just picked this up for the new setup at the office, or in my new office here. And it is the Samsung G9 Odyssey 49-inch super ultra wide monitor. And that will run about $1,400. However, if you take into account that it's 240 hertz VA with an HDR rating of 1000 and basically two 1440p monitors split in half, it looks like a much better deal, right? You're basically paying $700 for a piece for 1440p 240 hertz monitors with HDR at peak brightness of 1000 nit, which means that the HDR actually works. Unlike a lot of my other monitors that I've tried with HDR, where that 400 nit will not work. It looks like junk. So this monitor is probably the coolest thing I've ever gotten. I love it. Definitely highly recommended. Obviously, the price is a little bit high, but if you were already looking at trying to do like two 1440p matching monitors, definitely take a look because it's worth it. The big downside is when you go into picture-in-picture mode, which allows you to basically split into two separate 1440p monitors, it knocks it down to 60 hertz. So the only way to get 240 hertz right now is to actually have it, across the entire monitor. And that works okay for content creation, though. If you were maybe going to want to do picture-in-picture and play game on one side and in full screen, and then on the other side have like your OBS and your chat up or whatever, it would be locked at 60. You can still go like windowed mode, of course, and then like play with that, or even windowed borderless and take down the resolution. I'm still playing with all the different options, and it may just need an entire tutorial on its own because there's a lot of little quirks and stuff you can do to fix those things. All right, so holding it up, there's only one monitor arm that will currently hold it up. So I don't like to have it, especially with a desk that's going up and down all the time, unsecured on a stand. It just doesn't seem like a good idea. And because there's only one, it's the Ergotron HX, and it's expensive. So it's going to be around $280 for that monitor arm, but it's the only one that holds it. And then in addition to that, you actually have to get a heavy duty tilt add-on. Otherwise, the monitor will just fall forward. I did verify this with the original tilt just to see. And yes, it just goes, it's not strong enough to hold the monitor up. So you will need to get that additional add-on, which is going to be around $65. And so you just need to keep that in mind. So it's not just depending on, like, if you wanted to mimic exactly this setup, I wouldn't recommend having a standing desk without a full-on mount, especially if you spent this amount of money on a monitor. So be prepared to do it right and spend the money to get the correct parts. The mount was pretty rough to get installed. Obviously, like putting even just like the monitor's super heavy too. It took quite a bit of work. I did do it myself, so I was able to do it myself. But I would prefer having two people for sure, by the way. Just that would be my recommendation. Don't do as I do as I say. Get two people. Yeah, there you go. All right, so then for the peripherals, as far as mouse and keyboard, we have the GMMK Compact from Glorious. Now, you can purchase these for $110 with different switch options. I don't know that there's a Panda switch option. Go check out Bad Seed Tech, who does like peripheral reviews, a lot of custom keyboard builds and stuff, for his review and what to do on the switches. What we have in here is the Panda switches, which comes from Glorious, and they need some lube, and there's some other things you can do to change the feel of them. They feel really good once you get them tuned in, lubed up, and ready to go. But the go-to, like for everybody, is always going to be those Cherry MX Reds, and those you can also just purchase and put straight into the board if you like as well, and that'll get you that nice quick action gaming feel. And then if you want to play with other things, I like the Panda switches a lot, but it's really going to be personal preference as far as all of that goes. Then for the mouse, we have the Glorious Model O wireless. Currently, I don't know that you can purchase them anywhere. They're going to be around $70 to $80, and it works very well. I love the Model O series. If you want a lighter version, like when I'm doing some FPS, I really like the Model O Negative. I have that one as well as the Model O non-wireless, and those are going to be a little lighter. But the convenience of having the wireless, especially on a big mouse pad and a big desk setup like this, is nice. So it really depends on what you're doing. The latency has been perfectly fine in games. I haven't noticed any issues. So it's kind of really good for a wireless mouse. There are other options. Let me know what peripherals you guys use, and if you do any custom keyboard builds or anything like that, I'd be curious to hear about it. So then let's get into the content creation peripherals. A lot of this is stuff that people ask me about. We are always upgrading, trying to make things better. Right now, we're going to be working on sound dampening in this room because of the echo, but a lot of the problems have just been resolved by throwing money at it, and I can't lie about that. So for the actual camera setup, we have the Elgato ring light. Big problem here being on the standing desk, and this, here we go, see the earthquake that you guys mentioned. As long as I don't touch the desk, we're usually pretty good with this particular setup, and I can get everything rolling and get in. But there's no shock mount for the camera, and when we get into the camera setup, you'll understand why we don't have any sort of stabilization within the camera, but there's a reason for that, and it does get better picture quality that way. So the ring light portion does work great, especially if you could mount it to maybe like a separate desk, if you had like an L, or if you have a really sturdy desk that you aren't doing a stand-up on. So the stand-up portion of this is kind of the problem. But what's really nice about my desk setup right now is I only have one power cable running to the wall, and nothing else goes to the wall. Everything else is on the desk or attached to the desk in some way. And that's why we wanted to attach the PC, to it. And then I can kind of adjust the desk to get behind it if I want to work on it, or get under it or whatever. And then we can get all that cable management done. Looks super clean. That's why I have it like this. So the Stream Deck we also have, that's really good for streaming. It's even pretty good for quick cuts for recording. What I do right now is I pipe everything into OBS, and what that allows me to do is do the quick kind of transitions into reading articles on another monitor and showing you guys what we're doing there. Whatever it is, it does help with a lot of that, but you can set that up to hotkeys on your keyboard. But the Stream Deck does make everything super easy. And I believe what that will run you is 150, and the ring light was around 175. So for the camera, we just upgraded the camera, and I feel like I made a mistake here. I think it works really well for live streaming, and I think that it works really well for a majority of content. We have a few different cameras. Our first camera was basically a camcorder, Panasonic camcorder that's back here. That's really old videos, like we're talking way old videos, like almost a decade ago kind of thing. And then from there, we ended up getting the Lumix, which was the G4, I believe it is. Anyways, I don't know where it is now at this point. Its autofocus was really, really bad. And so we moved on to find a really good autofocus, because I don't have a cameraman. I need the autofocus. And so we went with the A6000. Just recently, we upgraded to the A6400, which is what we're recording this video on. And right now it's set to 1080p 60. I know there's some arguments for 1080p 30. I still like the 60 a lot better. That being said, we are looking at moving everything over to 4K. It does 4K 30, and that doesn't work though with the autofocus. So one of the things with the face detection that you can set up and everything with the Sonys that make them so good on the 6400, if you set that output to the 4K mode and then set the HDMI output to the 4K mode, it only will do spot focus. So that's a really big downside right now, and a real big reason why I'm not super happy with the camera itself. And it's just one little thing. So it really depends on what you're trying to do. If you're at below 4K, for your video recordings, it's going to do an awesome job. And so it really is just a use case thing. And because we have gone full time with this gig, I think it will be one of those things where we do upgrade to one of the bigger full-size Sonys, because this is, of course, not a full-size lens, so or a full-size capture. Anyways, so I'm not a camera guy. I try to learn what I can. This is just what we have here, and it is what it is. It will run around $1,000 for this particular camera. It's probably the #1 go-to camera for like quick blogging at all, and of course live streaming. A lot of the people that are on Twitch doing those hot tub shows are doing, of course, probably a similar setup. The lens here is probably the thing that really makes it pop the most. And this lens is going to be the 16mm Sigma, and that's going to have a 1.4 stop. Now that's also what makes basically the blurred background happen and give it that kind of like feel that it has. I don't know if you call it a cinematic feel or whatnot, but there's just that kind of quality lens. The thing is this lens does not have any stabilization in it, and there's no stabilization in the camera, so those bounces and stuff like that obviously are a lot more pronounced, which is a problem that I will need to get resolved. But this lens looks so good that I really don't want to move off of it. So the next thing you need if you want to do this setup and pipe everything in, live stream from the camera, not really have to worry about charging batteries all the time. It's just going to be a power adapter. You can pick them up for like 20 bucks. They plug into the camera where the battery would normally go and then plug into the wall. And I think that's very important to note. And then to pipe the video output into the PC, we just have a 4K micro HDMI to HDMI cable. Now, the big problem here too is that these micro HDMI to HDMI cables are super finicky. There are only really a couple that will actually output the 4K. So if you're looking at outputting the 4K from the camera to a capture card for live streaming or something like that, you need to be very careful on which one you buy. And even if you get the most amount of bandwidth that you can possibly get out of the micro HDMI, it's not technically enough, and it definitely won't do 4K 60. It will do 4K 30, but that can still get some weird glitches, and we can talk about that in another video. If you're interested, let me know. Obviously, this is a cryptocurrency channel, so this is kind of a off the path, beaten path kind of video that we're doing here. So next, let's get into audio. Obviously, the microphone is here, but we have the Go XLR Mini, and that took a while to find. I was on a waiting list for B&H Photo. They're going to be around $300, and they're fantastic, even with a cheaper mic like the Pod mic, which we have used on this channel previously before we just recently upgraded to this one right here. It sounded fantastic. Now, the next thing, the microphone right here, the Shure SM7B, I think everybody should be familiar with it. I'm trying to upgrade everything to what I see other people are doing that works and seems to work all the time. And what that has done for the channel is improve, obviously, the quality of the content, as well as just make it easier. It's one of those things that you can get away with a lot of budget stuff, and I highly recommend doing that. That's what I did for like 10 years, right? But once you start getting into like trying to fully take advantage of every single advantage you can, right, for creating content, then you just got to bite the bullet. And so I would just reinvest in what we do here. And so this Shure SM7B will run you $300 to $400, depending on where you get it. I think even $500 up to there, because there are some used options. They are in stock pretty much everywhere, and I think they have been on a sale recently, which is when I got this one. So go do your best to find it if that's what you're interested in, and it sounds great. The downside for it, though, is going to be that it does need some sort of amplification. While the Go XLR Mini does have a fantastic preamp that will take it all the way up to like 60 decibels, it doesn't sound near as clean as if you get an external one like a Cloud Lifter or a FET head. Currently, I'm using a FET head because it's the cheaper of the two options, and depending on your voice frequency, which you need to be honest with yourself, it might be better than a Cloud Lifter. While Cloud Lifters do sound really good and they give you a little bit more bassy tones, it can be a little overwhelming, especially if you already have a bassy voice. A lot of this can be taken care of course, within the Go XLR as well. And if you guys would like a setup tour or a guide on the Go XLR and setup with this entire thing here for audio, let me know. Obviously, a big problem is going to be your room. We got to get some sound dampening in this new room. Otherwise, it just kind of hurts the audio. But, you know, we are at where we're at. And obviously, I haven't unpacked enough. So, finally, we have the mount here. Well, we have two more things, but we have the mount here, which is the Rode PS1 or PSA1. It is a fantastic mount. I have tried a ton of cheap ones from Amazon. There's nothing that compares to this. All of those start bending at the base at some point or falling apart. This Rode, I bit the bullet and bought the mount, and it's been good, and I haven't had to mess with anything. So it's one of those things where it's $120. You could get the cheap 20, 50. There's different levels, right, of cheap ones. What I found is I kept just buying other cheap ones that were a little more expensive. And then finally I was at the point where I was like, well, it's going to cost me $65 for the next more expensive one on Amazon, or just buy the Rode that everybody says works. And it works. And yeah, so no matter what mic you get, probably just get this stand. I have not had any luck with any other ones. If you have found like maybe some other alternatives that have been functioning for like, and I'm talking years, I'm not talking like a week, years, that aren't having any fall apart issues that are cheaper, let me know in the comment section below. I'd like to hear about them. So then we have the Audio-Technica MX50s. I actually have two sets of headphones. So we just picked these up actually like just here recently. And the reason we picked them up is because they're the go-to production headphones. And like I said, I want to make sure that I hear and see everything that I'm editing to the best of my ability. I could probably work on color correction, but we are working with an editor now that's hopefully going to take care of all of that. And then we just set the camera to natural, right? And then the go-to headphones that I've been using for a long time, these are really comfortable. So not only are these really comfortable, but they're also pretty cheap as far as comparatively for how good the sound quality is. The downside is the open back. And so the problem, and these are the Philips SHP 9500s. They fit much better. They're much more comfortable. But with the open back, if you're doing anything like remote podcasting, what I've noticed is I get bleed through into the mic, which then causes issues for you guys listening. So these are what I use for gaming. I still think they sound perfectly fine. Like obviously not as tight as like these, but at the same time for gaming, it's not what you're looking for. But these noise cancel a lot, and they're pretty tight. I'll have to wear them some more, but you hear your voice more when you're talking and that sort of thing in your head while I'm trying to do this right here. And they're not as comfortable. So, you know, long gaming sessions, these are what I would like to use. And we haven't been doing like a lot of live streaming of video games. Maybe we will get back into that. We still have all of this to unpack. We have desks to set up. We haven't even got the test bench back up, which is really what we got to get into. And then we're moving the farm on the 1st. So I don't even know. We have a lot of stuff going in. Anyways, all of this setup. Oh, one more thing that I want to mention. We have a Mogami XLR cable here. And that's a big deal. They're expensive. They're like $55 for a 10-foot. But they will take care of almost all of your white noise issues. And I actually wasn't having this issue at the last office, in my last office, but when we came here, I started getting like some bleed through. I don't know if it's because we have Wi-Fi 6 now in the house. I don't really actually know exactly what component. It could be something in the house. I don't know. What I do know is though, one of those things where I bit the bullet, I bought an expensive cable that has a crazy warranty on it. It'll be fine. Plugged it all up and boom, those issues were resolved. That's super important if you're having like white noise issues, etc., definitely think about that. Another thing that helps with the white noise issues was that FET head or cloud lifter, either or, that I talked about earlier, because you're not going to have to pump up that preamp within the Go XLR near as much. So there you go, guys. That's the entire setup. Everything here is around $10,000. So that's everything on the desk. That's including the desk, all of it, right? And that can sound like super expensive, and that's why you kind of got to step up over time. All of this has been accumulated over years and years and years. A lot of the stuff, like when we start talking about power supplies and junk like that, has been reused in multiple systems, right? The case has been reused for multiple systems. Threadripper was in here before, right? Different GPUs have been in here. It really just depends on like how fast you want to ramp up. And then if you have like 10 grand and you want to drop it in and get up and go and have the best of the best, then that would be a list you want to take a look at in the comment section below. Camera wise, obviously we still have some upgrades that we could do, and it could push the price of this way up. I think if you're streaming though, or vlogging, kind of like what we've been doing with the talking head videos, you don't necessarily need any more. You probably need more once you start getting into more heavier production type stuff. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you think about the setup and where you think you could save money or where you think you would spend more money to improve quality. And then we are going to be getting, I'm actually going to be getting the Elgato sound dampeners as well. We have some bass blockers, like the corners. I got to hang up in the corner here, probably up in front of me, right? Because you don't want it bouncing off the wall in front of you. And then maybe we'll do some in the back for decoration or whatever. So hopefully I'll get all that figured out. And if you guys have any tips on that, let me know as well. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next Tuesday. If you enjoyed this content, you can watch more by clicking this playlist up here, or go ahead and subscribe.